the gypsy clouds, the fields smile to welcome the sun. All nature sings praises aloud. The fields smile to welcome the sun. All nature sings praises aloud. The trees dance to show their elation. A day on God's earth has begun, and every true heart in creation in speechless wonder is bowed. And every true heart in creation in speechless wonder is bowed. Well done, Lord, oh very well done. The joy that you planted in children's hearts, the thrill known in bearing a son, the hope when a trial departs. The thrill known in bearing a son, the hope when a trial departs. The gladness of men and their neighbors, of youth and its victories won. Our joys are the proof of your labors. How wonderful, Lord, are your arts. Our joys are the proof of your labors. How wonderful, Lord, are your arts. Well done, Lord, oh very well done. At last I've discovered the mystic key. The world's joy, oh secretive one, replies to your sweetness in me. The world's joy, oh secretive one, replies to your sweetness in me. For here in my heart lies the answer, your love shedding light like the sun. All life seems to leap like a dancer, when gazing I see only thee. All life seems to leap like a dancer, when gazing I see only thee.
Good morning. My name is Nayaswami Diksha, and along with my husband, Nayaswami Gyandev, we'd like to welcome all of you, especially the guests and the visitors, those who are here taking the First Timers Weekend, and those who are here for the meditation teacher training. So welcome to all of you. I'd like to start by reading from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible in the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. The topic of this week is self-reliance versus self-reliance with a capital S. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week, we considered the need for attunement with God, with the Gurus, with the wisdom of others, until we make that wisdom our own. There is a strong and in fact valid belief nowadays in the need for standing on one's own feet rather than depending weakly on others to carry us by their strength. Swami Kriyananda was once asked, "What is the best yoga posture?" "That one," he replied, "which sets you squarely on your own 2 feet." Our strength must come from within. If that strength comes from the ego, however, instead of from soul consciousness, it is like a guitar string without its sounding board. The notes it emits will be thin and feeble. Our strength must come from within, but must be coupled with recognition of our inner link with broader and higher realities. The Bhagavad Gita says in the 10th chapter, everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the great sun of my effulgence. Jesus, in talking to his disciples, emphasized also the power of attunement with his own consciousness as a ray of the divine. For this ray has descended already through him in response to their devotion. It was a sign that God was already listening to them with receptive attention and did not require to be wooed in that way any longer. In the passage preceding the one that we read last week, Jesus said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth no fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine, no more can ye, except ye abide in me. This was the meaning of Paramahansa Yogananda's counsel also, when speaking more intimately to the disciples of the need for attunement with him. Thus, through Holy Scriptures, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
I'd like to share with you from Whispers from Eternity, Yogananda's book of prayer poems. O Father, thou art just behind my vision with which I see thy beauty without. Thou art just behind my listening power with which I hear thy voice in all creation. Thou art just behind my touch with which I feel thy world. In the sweetness of flowers and in the zest of sustaining food lies hidden the essence of thy being, thine eternal sweetness. Thou art just behind the voice of my prayer. Thou art just behind the mind with which I pray. Thou art just behind my glistening feelings. Thou art just behind my thoughts. Thou art just behind my cravings for thee. Thou art just behind my meditations. Thou art just behind the veil of nature's splendors. Thou art just behind the screen of my love. Behind all these mystic screens, reveal thyself as thou art. Our topic this morning, self-reliance versus self-reliance, is really an interesting one. You know, the small self, the ego self, is the kind of the entire human package, not just the body, personality, your talents, abilities, desires, likes and dislikes, everything that sort of defines most people as who they think they are in totality. And the world is set up to encourage this kind of thinking. I don't really agree with God's plan on this point, but this is the way it is. Our whole existence encourages us to rely on our own resources, or the to interact with the world around us. What's the very first thing we do when we're born? That's the second thing we do. First thing we do is inhale. Second thing we do, as Yogananda said, is cry at the thought of being reborn once again. And it just goes on from there. We need food, we need shelter, we need love and care, and all of that comes from around us. And we very, very quickly learn to manipulate this world, manipulate the people around us to satisfy our desires. Think of it this way. We are control freaks from birth. Right? It works. It really works. You can manipulate the world around you to a degree. And some people get really, really good at it. And throughout their lives, this is the pattern. This is certainly the pattern that I grew up in. This is what I thought you do. You manipulate the world to the best of your ability, trying to get what you want, and hopefully you're being a reasonably good person along the way, and you don't get any lightning bolts thrown at you from above, and that's how you live. Well, there are a couple problems with that. There are a number of problems, but I wanted to mention a couple of them. One of them is the hammer and nail problem. The expression, I think it's attributed to Maslow, if all you have is a hammer, then everything starts to look like a nail. And this is the pattern we get into in our lives. If all we do is draw upon our own human resources, the resources of the small self, then every need that comes up, every problem that comes up, our first impulse, the strong impulse is, oh, I have to use my own resources to take care of that. And that has a problem with it, a couple of problems. The first is that not every problem that comes up can be solved that way. And I'm not just talking about the big problems, like who am I and why am I here? There's no way our own resources can handle that one. But even excellence in this world, even greatness in this world, really takes a drawing on something more than our own individual resources. There's a book, it's interesting, it's back in print now. It was out of print for many, many years, called Talks with Great Composers. And it's by a man named Abel. And he interviewed a number of 19th century composers, great ones, and not so great ones. And he found that the ones who are generally considered great felt that their music didn't come from them, that it was something that they heard, and that they were more the stenographer for the music, rather than, and the lesser composers felt that they were creating the music. So even greatness in a sort of, if you will, not an overtly spiritual way, really takes more than just our human resources. But there's a bigger problem with depending all the time on our own resources. It makes us very, very small. I remember when I first came upon that, the reading in the Gita from today, which is, I just repeated, everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the great sun of my effulgence. Effulgence, brilliant radiance. And I remember the first time I saw that, and I thought, wow, all greatness in this world belongs to God. And there was a part of me that didn't like that. Because it was like God was saying to me, dude, this was in pre-dude days, but when you're beyond time and space, you can sort of come in anywhere you want to. So I felt like God was saying to me, dude, what you have is so pitifully small, and by the way, it's mine anyway. And I didn't like that. I thought, well, all right, so maybe it's on the small side. But it's gotten me to this point, which is all right, not so bad. And can't I just have some of it? And this is the natural tendency, even in people who are quite spiritually advanced. Yogananda's, from a story of Yogananda's first disciple in this country, Dr. Lewis, once asked Yogananda, so when I merge in God, when I just attain the state of yoga, is it just going to be sort of poof, like Dr. Lewis never existed? Because it would be sort of too bad if that happened. And don't we all feel that way? Isn't there's something special about us that it would just be too bad to lose? And Yogananda reassured him. He said, no, it's the memory remains. Well, the memory wasn't quite enough to satisfy me, but it satisfied Dr. Lewis that, no, it's not like you never existed. It's just that you're no longer limited to that existence. But when we just depend on our own resources, we become very, very centered around our little selves. And we start to use our little selves as the reference point for everything that we do in our lives and everything that happens in our lives and everything that happens around us. And it's just basically just puffing up the ego. I read an interesting quotation from Ted Turner, who is a media mogul and other kinds of moguls too, multi-billionaire. He said, "If only I had humility, I would be perfect." Well, it's a very lonely, very small way to live. It's like Benjamin Franklin, a great quote. He said, "A man who is wrapped up in himself makes a very small bundle." And a little more contemporary quotation I ran across the other day said, "When science discovers the center of the universe, there are going to be a lot of people who are very disappointed when they find out that they're not it." So the question becomes, how can we rely more on the higher self? This is really what the spiritual path is all about, whether you're talking about yoga or any other spiritual path. It's really about getting out of smallness and into greatness, escaping the bonds of ego. And the Gita has a lot to say about this. Well, many scriptures have a lot to say on this, but in 3 weeks, Diksha and I are going to be teaching a week-long course on the Bhagavad Gita, which I invite you all to come to. And so the Gita has been very much on my mind, so I've kind of been looking at that a lot. And I want to share a couple of points that the Gita makes about how to rely on the higher self. And the first one is to really know our part in this process. When we need to do something in this world, what our inclination is I got to get going. I can't wait for God to get in this. I got to get going and do whatever I can. And that's not false. We do have to get going. That God isn't going to be able to help us, or to put it a different way, we're not going to have the magnetism to attract divine assistance until we get some energy moving. But Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita makes the point to Arjuna, his disciple who's teaching. He says that, but your role, Arjuna, is just to do your best. That's it. In fact, that's the only thing you can do, is your best. That the results are totally in my hands. And our best is to put out the clearest, cleanest, most abundant, best intentioned energy we can. And that's what draws God's grace, God's power. That's how to rely on Spirit in whatever we're doing. And I had an interesting experience with that, or sort of a second-hand experience with that, when I was very young, my older brother, one of my older brothers, they were all older than I was a very, very good golfer, kind of a tournament-level golfer. And he was in a golf tournament, and it was very near the end of the tournament. And only he and his playing partner were in contention to win this. Everybody else was far enough back so that there was no hope for them. And at one point, I think it was like on the 15th hole or somewhere around in there, getting close to the end, but not at the end. My brother turned to my brother Bob was his name, and he turned to my father, and who was, I don't know if my father was caddying for him or just walking around with him. He said, "That guy cheated on the last hole. He gave a different score from what he really did. What do I do?" Now, I don't know how many of you are golfers, but it's extraordinarily uncomfortable to accuse someone of cheating. Probably in just about anything it is, but golf it certainly is. And yet, the tournament was at stake. What was he going to do? And my father, who was not a religious man at all, in fact, when he was in a religiously fervent year, he would go to church once. But he was a spiritual man, in a way. And he said, "Bobby, we'll let it go." He said, "There's gods that got charge of these things. And sooner or later, they're going to take care of it." And my brother's response was, "But what if it doesn't happen today?" He said, "Never mind. This is not your business." It's like Krishna talking to Arjuna. This is not your business. You just do your best. You just play your best. And interestingly enough, about 2 holes later, the other guy his game fell apart. My brother ended up winning the tournament. Very interesting. So to know our role is just to do our best. God can take care of it. God will take care of it. It's hard to do. It's hard to do when we feel something very, very pressing in our lives, whether it's out of time or out of importance. But it's the only way that things really happen in this universe. And to put our concentration in putting out the highest quality energy that we can. The other point that I want to make from the Gita really involves directly this quotation from today's reading. Everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the sun of my effulgence. You know, as I over the years, as I looked at that passage a bit more closely, I started to kind of turn it sideways from that way that I'd first resented so much, wanted to keep what I thought was mine for myself, and really saw God as saying, look, whatever you have, whatever talent you have, whatever strength you have, whatever ability you have, that is a living link with me. That is like the Theseus or Ariadne's thread in the labyrinth. To get out of the labyrinth. There's a living link with God. Use it that way. Use your talents as a way to connect with Spirit, as a way to rely on Spirit. You know, I saw something interesting the other day. Someone sent me a link. And not being a television watcher, this was a television program I didn't even know existed, but now I've since realized that this program probably exists in every country. Probably some of you have seen the television show America's Got Talent. Well, I don't have a television, so I only seen it when I visited my mother. But it turns out just about every country in the planet has one of those. Israel has one. Britain has one. I found out that Korea has one also. And a friend of mine sent me a link to a little episode or portion, just a little segment of Korea's Got Talent. And it was very, very, it was one of the more moving things I've seen in a while. A young boy, not that young, 22 years old, walked out onto the stage, and he was obviously extremely nervous. He was wearing jeans and a plaid shirt, not exactly what you expect on television. And you didn't know quite what he was going to, you knew he was going to sing. The judges knew he was going to sing, but that was about all they knew about him. And one of the judges, the main judge, asked him, I see in your application for this competition that you left the part about family blank. And he stopped. And he started to say, when I was 3, I was left in an orphanage. And when I was 5, I ran away from the orphanage because I was beaten there. And for the next 10 years, I lived on the street, selling gum and energy drinks. And he lived alone. He slept in stairwells and public toilets for 10 years. It was getting pretty moving just listening to his story. The judge asked, well, how did you come to singing? Is this because you just enjoy singing? He said, well, rather than say that I sing because I enjoy it, I say that it was the first thing I enjoyed after having had that, what he called his dayfly life. I didn't know what a dayfly was, but it's a mayfly. Mayfly, a fly that lives for one day. And that's it, and that's how he was living, one day at a time, all alone on the street. And he educated himself somehow. I have no idea. He passed equivalency exams to get through elementary school and middle school and was able to actually get into high school. And he said that how he came to singing was one night he was in a nightclub selling gum, as he usually did, and he said the music in nightclubs, as you know, is usually very, very exciting. We would say rajasic. Okay. He said, but that night, he said that the vocalist was so singing so sincerely. He said that I was fascinated. And he said, from that time on, I have liked to sing. And so the judge said, well, let me hear you sing. Not knowing what was going to happen. And out of this 22-year-old boy came this incredible, operatic, beautiful voice. And he sang in Italian, no less. And it just totally stunned the audience and stunned the judges, and it took very little time for the stun to turn to tears as people were watching him. The combination of what he'd been through in his life and this thing that was happening through him was very, very difficult for anybody to wrap their minds around. The judges, certainly, there was just tears streaming down the judges' faces as they watched this. And of course, he got a wonderful, wonderful ovation. And afterwards, the main judge couldn't even speak. She just said, I just want to give you a hug. And another one of the judges said, asked him if he'd had singing lessons. And he said, well, I took a few master classes when I had a chance, but basically I just listened and practiced by myself. And that other judge said, well, I don't know how this competition is going to end, but I'm going to help you continue your lessons. It was very beautiful, but what struck me so much about it was, yes, the poignancy of his story, but and the beauty of his singing too, but more than that was what seemed to happen to him when he was singing. He himself said, when I sing, I feel like a different person. And, that expression, but you don't often literally see it in someone, but you could see it in this young man. From this man who was just having his hands and kind of fidgeting with his hands and was speaking in very clipped tones and just holding himself very stiffly. When he began to sing, everything changed, and it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. And here's the thing, he wasn't performing. There was not this much performance in what he was doing, as rather that a song was being sung through him. And that was his joy. To feel that coming through him. You could just visibly perceive that in him. And it was so added to that thought. You said at one point, he said, when I was young, many bad things happened. He said, I felt like I'd been sold somewhere. And for him to find that way to just, at least during the time of his singing, make all of that go away. To bring in something much, much larger and have that flow through him. I doubt that he referred to that something larger as God in his own mind, but it didn't matter. It wasn't a concept we're talking about. It's an experience that was happening through him. And it was so beautiful to see, and it really brought home this point from the Gita, that whatever it is, whether it's our strengths, our talents, or our inspiration, it's all a spark of God coming through us. And it is our living connection with Spirit. I wanted to take you through a very brief exercise here, kind of doing that a little bit. I'd like you to think about, for a moment, some strength or character quality or talent or inspiration that you have in your life. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be some observable talent, like I'm a good carpenter or I'm a good artist. It can be I'm a person who's kind, or I'm a person who knows how to be a friend. I'm just thinking of one of my brothers who has friendship down. He is everybody's friend. Everybody thinks they're his friend. Not because he tries to make it that way, but because of who he is. Friendship flows through him. So just think of something that flows through you for a moment. Sit up straight, like for meditation. Just close your eyes, lift the gaze to the point between the eyebrows, and visualize yourself in a situation where that strength, that talent, that inspiration, whatever it is happening. It's coming through you. Visualize the situation very clearly, and not like it's on a movie screen, but rather like you're there right now. Think, where are you? Is anybody else there? Who is it? What are you doing? Be very, very specific. And try to feel that strength, that quality, that inspiration flowing through you. So let that be the dominant part of your experience. It's just that feeling. Don't think it, feel it. And try to feel that behind that, behind wherever it's flowing from, is an infinite supply of that same thing. It's the presence of God. Right behind this situation flowing through you. Keep that feeling, but drop away the specifics of the situation. Drop away where it is, or who is there, or even what you're doing. And just focus on the flow of this coming through you, the feeling of it. And more than that, the feeling of what's behind it, that infinite source that is your link with God. And imprint that feeling strongly on your memory. very strongly. So that the next time you have an opportunity to express that strength or to feel that inspiration, that what you feel is not going to be about the situation itself so much as Spirit flowing through you. This is relying on Spirit. This is relying on the higher self. Now let's open the eyes once again. You know, we rely on the higher self whether we are trying to or not. We can't avoid it. Yogananda said, if God stopped thinking about you for a moment, you'd cease to exist. But there are different ways of relying on it. There's a passive reliance, just sort of acknowledges it, acknowledges our dependence on God. And we can get through with our own resources that way, and we perhaps can do things that are even pretty darn good in the eyes of this world. But we can't do the highest that way. Because the highest relying on Spirit is active relying. And to draw that dynamically into our lives through cooperation. Because when we do that, that's when we grow. Not only in what we can do in this world, but most importantly, that's when we grow in happiness. That's when we grow in joy.
Peace gave us the mountains, peace gave us the sky. Nightly when starlight enfolds us, peace is its lullaby. Peace gave us the seasons, peace